All right, good morning, y'all. We are live on YouTube on the Falcons Podcast. We want to be live on Facebook, so we're going to go to Atlanta Falcons fans on All Falcons and Scott Kennedy Sports today on Facebook. And come on, one more. Kick it in. Kick it in. There we go. Welcome in, everybody. This is the Falcons Podcast on Monday morning, and it is a different feeling, or is this the same feeling type of Monday morning we've had? Nick, I promised you Friday on Coast to Coast Football, if the Falcons go up and lose in Charlotte, we would talk head coaches on Monday morning. Now, that's not to say that anything's going to happen over there, Atlanta media folks, Atlanta Falcons communications. We're not saying that that Arthur Smith is gone, but what do we do for the NFL draft? We look at who could be a possibility, who could come in, what is possible out there. So that's what we're going to do today. Nick, how are you doing today?
I am doing pretty well. I've been a busy weekend doing a lot of different stuff, watching football as I could. Pretty unfortunate Saturday night with the Broncos going into Detroit and getting similarly beat up as we saw the Falcons when they went into Detroit earlier this year. And just getting ready for the baby to come, Christmas stuff. I feel like I haven't had a moment other than watching football, a chance to sit down. So it's, I guess this is football too, sitting down here. But I've been really busy and excited for the little guy to come.
Yeah, I've watched a lot of football this weekend, and I think the only game I missed from our Friday preview show was the Atlanta Falcons. I think that's the only one I missed. I think I got.
Did you pick the Bills?
I did pick the Bills.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah,
same.
I picked the Bills because the Cowboys were coming off some emotional victories. They were going on the road. The Bills were hot, and they needed it.
Desperate.
So I did pick the Bills. The desperation factor in there. In the regular season, that matters. Come playoffs, you throw that out the window, and it's just who's the better team, who's playing better. But in the regular season, who needs it more makes a difference, usually, if you're good teams, when good teams match up like that, especially when you're coming off a couple emotional victories like the Dallas Cowboys have. There's just an inevitable little bit of a letdown during the regular season. We go live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on these channels because we love having the community in here. We've got a great community here across these different platforms, and we want to say hello to some folks. He says, good morning, Scott and Nick on the Falcons Podcast. Good morning, Michael. Thanks for getting up with us this morning. He's out in Arizona. John Harrell says, good morning, Scott and Nick, the boys and ladies. I sure hope Ritter and Smith missed the ride back to Atlanta. I think I said that you should just leave Arthur Smith in Charlotte if they lose this game. And the last thing I said on this topic last week, Nick, was this report. I put in air quotes for those of y'all listening after the fact, that Arthur Smith's job is safe unless. Yes, we know. Everybody's job is safe unless. Let's see if he goes up to safe means I can lose and I'm going to have a job. We'll find out how safe his job is. And Nick, I have a question for you and for all y'all out there. If this was any other team than the Atlanta Falcons, any other franchise in the NFL, the Atlanta Falcons, would there be any doubt, any question of what the next step would be with Arthur Smith and this team? Would there be any doubt in your mind that the Falcons would be having a new head coach week 1 of next year? Would there be any doubt?
I'm sure there are a few teams that are a similar boat, but this is year 3. You've invested heavily into this team, and the offense under an offensive-minded head coach is flatlining down the stretch here in games that you cannot be flatlining. There's no positive momentum, so I just think that there are a few teams in that category. Scott, maybe a team like Buccaneers or something, but yeah, no, this is heading towards a inevitable, unspectacular conclusion, I think, especially after this loss to Carolina and in a game that nobody saw, right? If you lose a game against a terrible team and nobody attends, do the results even count? Yes.
They still matter. And hats off to Carolina Panthers fans. Hats off to the Atlanta Falcons fans that sat through that game. What a miserable spectacle of football. It'll never happen, but promotion and relegation is so much fun for this reason. If you're sitting in the bottom 3 in the Premier League, where, I watch Chelsea Football Club in the bottom 3, they move you down a level. They move you down a tier to the second division. A lot of people are learning this because of Ted Lasso. But here they just give you a higher draft pick and they reward you for losing because the Billionaire Boys Club has already bought their way in and they don't like risk. This would have been just an absolutely massive, I mean, party in the streets type of win if this was a relegation fight. But good for the Carolina Panthers for going out there, and the fans, especially for the fans, for going out there and supporting the team. Those of you that made it in those miserable conditions. Red Swarm says, "Good morning, good Monday morning, Scott, Nick in the chat." Wow, just wow. Smith has got to go. I think Arthur Blank will wait until we are eliminated from playoff contention. I don't know. And in this division, that could be the end of the season. That could be the last week, honestly, because they'll get a chance to play the Saints. And depending on what the Buccaneers do, there could be a game and it could be a division record. They're all tied. The Buccaneers have the lead in the division now because they still have just one loss in the division where everybody else has at least two. I just, again, going back to the Jets game, I got some flack for the offensive performance. Scott, it was raining. Their defense is really good. And I started thinking about today. I'm like, oh, it's raining. Look out. Can't do anything in the rain. And I started, the nursery rhyme hit me, Nick. If nothing is done, it's raining, it's pouring, the old man is snoring. Blank has to do something. He has to. You can't sell this to the Atlanta fan base again. Brother, God bless him. He's running out of time. I think he's 81 years old and change and has health problems. He has to do something. I don't say they're going to, but something's got to be changed. And right now, if it's your offense, you bring in a new offensive coordinator and play caller, Dave Ragone, you can sacrifice him. That's the only way I think it's even possible Arthur Smith is here next year.
Yeah, and the other thing is this is a team that I would think would be pretty demanded. I want a position, a head coaching spot that you can get, I think, a good candidate in here because, like we've said on here, on paper, this Falcons team has good bones, and the pathway is not of least resistance, but pretty low resistance out there in the AFC South. I mean, there's not a team right now that is just, young superstar players across the board on contracts. The Saints have issues. We see what's going on with Carolina. Even though you lost, it's still, that's a team that's going to take years to dig out probably. And the Buccaneers are in a weird spot too. So I think it's because it is such a good, luring spot that you should go out there and hunt for a new head coach. This is a game that kept saying, pump the brakes. We still got more games to see. Let's see how they do down the stretch. But going into Carolina and losing it in that fashion, especially with the running game going down the way it did against, Carolina team that's playing for nothing but pride at this point. They're not even playing, to secure that number one pick. There's nothing. And to go down and get embarrassed like that, even though it's 9-7, we can call it an embarrassment when you lose to that team in that fashion. So, I think I've been the one pumping the brakes, Scott, saying like, let's wait, let's see how it plays out. But Ritter, Smith, adios.
Yeah, and again, Ritter can be on the team next year. He's cheap and can be a backup fine. And if you go after a quarterback, but you have to make a significant investment in the quarterback this offseason, whether it's with a first round draft pick or more, if you need to move up some, or you go after a veteran, you have to make a significant. And if Desmond Ritter, the light bulb comes on and he wins the job, great, no problem. This isn't about Desmond Ritter. I'm rooting against Desmond Ritter. No, I'm not pleased with the way he's leading this team at quarterback. That has to get better. Yeah. That's not a hot take. That has to get better. And frankly, on a personal note, yes, I was a little annoyed at how many times he went first person plural when asked about his interception yesterday. We. No, dude, no. You throw that interception, it is I. That was a little, and I felt like he was just in clicked on robot mode at that point and was just checked out.
Yep.
I feel like he's checked out. So this team needs an enema. Coming in with the stars, Edward Brown, with a super chat on YouTube. I'm all backwards. He's got it going for us. Appreciate you. Breaking the ice. He says, I'm finally on the get Justin Fields bandwagon if he becomes available. There's a lot of Justin Fields haters out there, and so be it. You're entitled to all that stuff. But to think that he wouldn't help this Falcons team, to me, and again, is nuts. I think to say that he wouldn't be an upgrade at quarterback for this team is there's a bias there that is overriding the facts. And the facts are that Justin Fields is capable of making so many more good plays than Desmond Ridder is. They almost go into, it's a team game, so I'm not judging a quarterback wins, but they almost go into Cleveland and win that game. And if it weren't for balls just bouncing right off a guy's hands, he throws for another 150 yards and a couple touchdowns, and that game is put away.
Yeah.
Justin Fields has played well this year. If they move on, they're gonna get a first-round draft pick for him. And I have a feeling when the Falcons go up to Chicago, he's gonna put on a freaking show.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, Atlanta's defense, to their credit, the offense has fallen apart, but Atlanta, even though you're missing, Animata and injuries here or there, playing really tough. Calais Campbell stood out. Congrats to Zach Harrison getting a sack today. I mean, I know that's not a great.
Yep. Saquon got his first sack too.
Yep. Saquon, also good to see. So they're still fighting. Now, that's one of the things. I know Falcons fans, you're kind of stuck in the area where I felt like Broncos country was last season, like, oh my gosh, have to do something, have to fire the staff, have to get a new head coach in here. Can we do it while still keeping the defensive staff in place? Doesn't typically work that way, folks. I know that how much we like what the Falcons have done defensively. They are far from the issue. But typically you don't see guys kept on staff when you have a complete coaching staff overhaul. So probably not happening there, keeping Nielsen, but we'll see. Crazy things do happen.
What would I do right now? Okay, before we get into some of these candidates, what would I do right now? I would relieve Arthur Smith of his duties right now, and I would elevate Ryan Nielsen to the interim head coaching job for the last 3 weeks of the season. If he goes 3-0 in the last 3 weeks of the season, this team finishes 9-8, I'd give him the job full time. That's what I would do. Will that happen? Probably not. Rusty Moore saying, fire Arthur, hire Ben Johnson, draft a quarterback. All right, let's get into this real quick. One of the 2 or 3 hottest head coaching candidates I think that will be in this offseason is Detroit Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. Detroit Lions go on a good, I had this conversation, go on a good run, enjoy him because you're not going to have him next year. Watching what he's doing with Sam Laporta, with David Montgomery, with Jahmyr Gibbs, what do you think he would do? Would the Falcons be better off with him running plays for Drake London, for Tyler Algier, for Kyle Pitts, for Bijan Robinson? Someone says, well, is he going to bring Jared Goff with him? No, but they will do something. And we've seen how many backup quarterbacks won this weekend, Nick?
I mean, every team is playing a backup, it seems like. So
what's the common denominator there? Decent offensive coach. That's a decent offensive coaches. Whether it's Joe Flacco, whether it's Jake Browning, there's several out there. I'm forgetting. Houston Texans. We'll get to them in just a moment. But what do you think about Ben Johnson taking over this Atlanta Falcons team? And do you think he might want to? Well, we won't get into that. We're not going to speculate that. But what do you think he would do? Would he be a good candidate for this team?
Oh yeah, he's going to be the hottest head coaching candidate on the market. Don't get me wrong. They've invested a lot in that offense out there in Detroit over multiple years now with a lot of high draft picks because of the Matt Stafford trade, but they do seem like they are maximizing their offense as well. And it's a offense that can win in a multitude of ways. They are a little bit capped right now by the ability to play outdoors when Jared Goff kind of turns into a pumpkin when it gets cold and playing outside of that dome at Ford Field. But overall, I think he's probably going to be the most sought after head coaching candidate. They've really, really been aggressive and fun. And he'd be a great guy for Atlanta. Question is, he's going to have his pick of the jobs. Is Atlanta going to be the number one opening on the market this season? We will see. There was talk, of the Bills being one that if they came open, everybody wants to go play or go to Buffalo because Josh Allen, right? You get the quarterback there. That's the number one thing that gets coaches fired when you don't have that guy in the NFL. But Ben Johnson would be fantastic. You'll have to get a little bit more team speed, I think, on offense, Scott. If you want to run that Ben Johnson offense here in Atlanta, you don't have enough perimeter speed, in my opinion. But that's something that you can work on.
Yeah, I mean, the guys that they're running on the perimeter were not high round draft picks. They're just faster guys. They prioritize that. They've already got size. Okay, well, Let's go get, a 4-3 guy that stands out at the Senior Bowl with good hands that falls to the second or third round because he might be a little thin or whatever it is. Rudy comes in, he says, I know our offense is really bad, but why can't our defense stop anybody in crucial moments? 17 plays, 95-yard drive. And I saw this a little bit yesterday, actually, and I posted, and Rudy, this isn't at you, because you're not blaming. You're just frustrated. But I put out on a post yesterday, I'm like, this one's an IQ test. If anybody out there says that this loss is on the defense, just go ahead and block them because they're not worth listening to. That's not what you're saying. You're asking a question, and you're frustrated. I get that. It's complementary football, okay? When you force a team to punt 5 times in a row, hold them to field goals after turnovers, turn them over on downs, and you've only given up 6 points going into 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, the defense has done its job. It's up to the offense to put that game away at that point.
Yeah.
When you are as banged up as this Atlanta Falcons defense is, Onyemata, Grady Jarrett, Bud Dupree is a good player who was out there missing. That's 3 of your front 4 because they play a front 4. That's 3 of your front 4 that's out. You still held them to 6 points. Teams are going to get drives. You don't shut people out very often. They're going to get that drive, whether that 95-yard drive comes. Usually they come earlier. But this team's out of gas. They lose heart a little bit when, especially after a crucial turnover. You think you're going in for to put the nail in the coffin, and your quarterback gives the ball away. That's disheartening.
Again. Yeah.
The mental aspect of this game, you lose it. So, was I surprised as an Atlanta Falcons fan that grew up? No, I'm not. That's kind of what happens. But you can't put this on the defense. The defense gets a lot of stops in crucial situations. It's up to the offense to play complementary football and help out just a little bit. Just a little bit. Because they didn't.
You gave up 9 points. You lost the turnover battle by 2. You had a few bad snap exchanges too. This is not on the defense in this one, especially as you mentioned all the pieces that they're still missing there and getting it done. So what is supposed to be the bread and butter of this team, Scott, coming in the year? What's the one thing that, you close your eyes and you can lean on? And no matter what, we know we have this going into any matchup, any week, doesn't matter. It's supposed to be the run game, right? It was supposed to be this run game with Arthur Smith and whatnot. And granted, you lose Caleb McGarry out there, but that shouldn't tank your entire rushing efficiency. But coming into this Carolina game, and shout out to Carolina's defense and Azure Evero, they haven't been the problem so much there in Carolina this season, but you come in and you get, what do we have here? 1.7 yards per rush on 31 attempts in the rain when you have a quarterback who has some issues protecting the football. You cannot do that. You cannot do that with what you've invested in this team, a top pick at running back. You have Tyler Algier, you bring back Cordell Patterson, all these early picks on the offensive line as well, the big bodies at the pass catchers as well, so that way they can help in the run game. Just not nearly good enough. And I see you have Oblivion Empire coming in $9.99 here saying, I want Arthur fired and put Brian Nielsen in the interim head coach. Sounds familiar, Scott?
He goes, you finish reading that. It's kind of funny.
He just said that when I was typing it. So here's a donation. LOL. Let's get Fields. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And again, Arthur Smith and the offense has had a lot of invested in it. This is the team and the players that he wanted out there, and 9 points against this Carolina team in this situation, you can't have that. It's not acceptable.
I'll even round up and say that they kneeled out for the field goal. I'll even round up and give them the 13. Yeah. Because they played for the field goal at the end. They took 2 knees. Let's just say they scored that one. That's fine. 13 points. They score on that final one. Everything I just said still holds true about the defense. They did their job. They absolutely did their job.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, really unfortunate. And again, I've been on let's see how the season plays out. We still do have 3 games here. I mean, outside of Scott, the Falcons winning 3 games, getting into the playoffs, and then winning a playoff game even, I don't know how you can bring Arthur Smith back. Now it's a week-to-week league, and that world would be a lot different than the one we're sitting in currently. So if we get there, we'll have that conversation, but I just cannot see that future occurring at this point with where this team is. I mean, what do you even tell the locker room at this point, right? Like you can't go back to Heineke. You're turnover prone out the wazoos. You can't lean on the run game. Defense, we need Bates to score a freaking pick 6 to have any chance in these games right now. We can't do enough in the drop back pass game. It looks flat. Looks like there's no belief. There's no answer.
It was raining.
Hard. What was that?
It was raining.
I mean, okay. Then the run game you should be able to dominate your will there. I don't understand 1.6, 1.7 yards per carry.
Well,
You can't have
again, it
it.
was raining for both. And, if Bryce Young can throw for 167 yards and not turn the ball over, then a good quarterback should do what? Because Bryce Young hasn't been very good this year. Not saying he won't be, but he hasn't been very good this year. And he
No.
didn't look good yesterday either. There was one of his big completions. I said, man, it's a good thing, it's a good thing ducks let water slide off their back, because that was a freaking duck that quacked out there to the right sideline that fell into Mingo's hands, I think. It's bad. It's bad all around, which is why we're talking head coaches. It's just one of my followers on Twix, when I posted this show, was like, it's unfathomable that this isn't already a foregone conclusion. I agree, but we've seen it before. The Arthur Blank has usually held on to a person at least 1 year too long. Now, there's a lot of people that say that after back-to-back 7-7 seasons, that this year was that 1 year too long. I'm not one of those people. I think they did a good job with a patchwork team. But could they, and that was the big question, could this staff take a team full of more talent with higher expectations and take them to the next step? The answer to that has been unequivocally no. The winning percentage of their 8 losses, if you take out the 8 wins against the Falcons, their winning percentage against the rest of the NFL for the 8 teams that have beaten the Atlanta Falcons is .375. That is over the course of a season 6-11. 0-8 against 6-11 teams. Come on, man. Moving on. Next guy on the list that I want to talk about, and I said we'd come back to the Houston Texans, it's Bobby Slowick. Speaking of another team that just got a crucial win, playing above their heads, CJ Stroud has been phenomenal this year.
Backup quarterback.
CJ Stroud's out.
Yeah.
Well, Texans go in and get a win in a place that beat the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons couldn't beat Tennessee. Bobby Slowick, D'Amico Ryans, who is still in the running for head coach of the year, wins and gets the dub. What about Bobby Slowick in this discussion?
Bobby Slowick could be great. I mean, everybody is doing really well with the Kyle Shanahan offense right now. You look at the quarterback efficiency stats, and pretty much the half of the top 16 are Kyle Shanahan or Mike Shanahan disciples to some extent. So you got the McVay branch there as well. So getting that type of offense in here, you do always a little bit worry if you're a little late to the party in that there could be something that occurs that makes that style of offense worse. When things get a little bit too homogenous, then there's a sample out there or a solution that causes a problem for a lot of teams. That's always my concern if you're going to go after that pattern. But that pattern is so good right now. That Kyle Shanahan West Coast offense right now is so efficient. It's helping quarterbacks out. It's working the middle of the field. I don't think anybody does a better job right now of attacking linebackers and playing in that space. And coverage linebacker, I mean, they just don't really exist in the NFL. It's hard to find. So that's something I'd look at. Slowick's done a good job out there. He is not playing behind an offensive head coach too. So a lot of that offensive scheme and onus is on him. It's not like, he's coaching under Andy Reid and it's Andy Reid's team at the end of the day, but you have an offensive guy. What's his actual responsibilities? No, Slowick's the offensive guy there. And he's done a pretty good job maximizing a team with a bunch of non-first round weapons, not a lot of first round picks in the offensive line, and Stroud, who was playing like a MVP candidate prior to that injury there. So Slowick would be really interesting. Came from that Kyle Shanahan tree and has done a good job with the quarterback. Small sample size, but for an offensive guy, Scott, you're never going to get the full sample size because teams want them so early. So it's a little riskier, but you're not going to get one you're comfortable with. I guess sometimes you have Ben Johnson who'll stick around for a year, which is surprising. We thought he'd be gone last year.
You get 2
but mostly
years.
You have to go a year early. Yeah.
2 years of success. And
yes.
And that's Jeremy comes in with the stars on Facebook. Thank you, Jeremy. He says, I don't want another head coach calling his own plays. Not many people can handle both head coach and coordinator jobs simultaneously. Jeremy, I think it's become so common now that I don't think it's as big a concern. The one that bothers me much more goes way back, which is the guy who thinks he's the coach and the general manager. That one I hate. But if I look around right now at some of the top teams, I've got a lot of head coaches calling plays. I've got Kyle Shanahan calling plays for the 49ers. I got Mike McCarthy, who is yesterday, notwithstanding, I know, let's look at the total body of work this year, not just a single result. But Mike McCarthy started taking over plays for Dak Prescott, and he's having his best season. We've got Shane Steichen having a great success with Gardner Minshew, another backup quarterback that we didn't really mention. Shane Steichen in Indianapolis is another one of those guys. I feel like I could go on, but it's happening a lot more often that I don't mind it so much. And you become less susceptible to losing somebody year to year to year. Like Detroit, if they were, how much of the step back if they lose Ben Johnson do they take? If your head coach is the one that's the engineer of your offense, you're more fireproof.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's just a weird situation because going through the list of and Brennan Scott was talking about head coaches who are calling plays there. So yeah, Steichen's not an option, but it's really odd because the market this season, the names that I look at and I feel like, okay, that makes sense. It's mostly defensive guys, but you lose a lot of that quarterback head coach system, sustainability, what's the word I'm looking for? You're going to be much more volatile probably with a defensive-minded head coach at the end of the day because it is a quarterback league. So it will be tough, but I think you have to at least mention some of these defensive coaches, Scott, before we start to wrap it on up here. Guys like, of course, you have Raheem Morris, who's been really, really impressive out there with the Rams, what they've done, taking the Brandon Staley, Vic Fangio stuff and implementing it under the Pete Carroll.
He was the interim coach here, yes. And I think I didn't like him in Tampa, but when he came, he got humbled in Tampa. Mm-hmm. After he was bombed out in Tampa, he was humbled, and he did a good job in Atlanta, a really good job with the Falcons.
And now you have the ability also that he's been with the Rams for a number of years that he should have some connections to some of that McVay tree. So hopefully he could put together a good offensive staff on the other side. And I've been really impressed with the Rams have done defensively because Aaron Donald is not the Aaron Donald he was before. He's still unbelievable. Don't get me wrong, but he's not what he was, 3-4 years ago. And it's a lot of day 3 picks out there on that Rams defense, and they're playing feisty football. So Morris has been really impressive to me, somebody you want to keep an eye on, in my opinion. You also have, of course, the one that really sticks out to me, of course, Mike McDonald with the Ravens. He's really up and coming, what they're doing out there in Baltimore right now. I mean, we saw it last night, making Trevor Lawrence look very, very, very human. They've been awesome all season. And then the redemption guy this season, Scott, it's got to be Brian Flores with the Vikings. I mean, what they are doing there, that's not an overly talented defense, and they are playing some of the most crazy bat bleep football you've seen. They're number 1 in the NFL in 8 guys in coverage, so rushing 3 and dropping 8, but they're also like blitzing 3 times as much as anybody else. So to have that discrepancy in their numbers, I mean, nobody's doing what Minnesota is doing right now schematically, and that's a team that lacks, honest to God, lacks difference makers on the defense. So it's a lot scheme stuff. So he's been really impressive. It wasn't his fault, I think, in Miami, really. Their offenses were dreadful. So at least you have to consider some of the defensive guys. I wouldn't love that direction, but there are interesting guys there.
Has Dan Quinn missed his window, or is he still a head coaching candidate if he wants to be?
Oh, he's definitely a head coaching candidate, just not with Atlanta. If he'll get interviews, I wouldn't be surprised at all. There's been some talk, how much they love him in Dallas, that he could be paid so much that it's
he's making a ton of money now.
Yes.
And he loves he loves his job there. Yeah. You just start to wonder if they reach their ceiling and they do this, will Mike McCarthy stay that job if the Cowboys don't do anything in the playoffs this year?
I think he would keep his job if they don't do anything in the playoffs, just because I trust the sample size of the regular season much more than a 1-game sample size in the playoffs, where it can be pretty fluky.
And I'm thinking like a couple more years.
Oh yeah, I think that's
I'm thinking long term with Dan Quinn.
He might be, in the Dallas guy in waiting, because McCarthy probably, another 2 to 3 years, maybe 4. So that's the one that's we will see. And we got Michael coming in.
We've got some supers we want to hit. Then I want to hit you with a couple names before we get out of here. Michael Rankios says the Falcons make a mistake drafting running back Bijan Robinson this NFL draft. Thoughts, Scott and Nick? And thank you for the support, Michael. I don't think it was a mistake. He's a great player. If you draft great players, that's fine. Is that the direction I would have gone? No. I've said several times I would have taken Jalen Carter in that spot. Just a much more rare ability that Jalen Carter brings to the table than a really, really good running back. Premium position, longevity. cost control benefits, all of those type of things. I would have gone Jalen Carter in that spot, but no, I don't think it's necessarily a mistake. It's just not the direction I would have gone. And frankly, one of the elephants in the room is Bijan has had some very costly fumbles this year too, including one yesterday. He's made some mistakes. The narrative around Bijan Robinson is he's not being used enough, which I agree with. What's not being said is he has had some mistakes and some turnovers that have been very costly to the Atlanta Falcons as well.
I would say it would be a mistake right now looking back, because your window for the viability for a running back is pretty much the first 4 years. It's we need to take off and run immediately. And now we've burned 1 year of that cost controlled with him potentially being one of the better options. And he's a decreasing asset the further you get from that first year of the rookie contract. So I would be concerned about the return on that. It was always the question of, is it worth taking a player in the top 10? Well, if you make the playoffs and you're on the back of that running back and you're maximizing those first 4 years, then we can have that discussion. But one is already in the bank, and it was not worth it at this point. So it
was a win now move. They called when Kyle Pitts was taken, they called that a win now move. That was bunk. The team was not set up to win now. This team was set up to win this year, and they went for it with that pick. They didn't get it.
No.
But can he be an asset for this team for the next 3 years, 4 years, your team? Yes, he can. He can be a very key player. So I'm not going to call it a mistake yet. Is it the direction I would have gone? No. This season has been a mistake. This has been a lost season for everybody. I'm not going to let that stain Bijan Robinson as the draft pick yet.
But at the same time, you have to talk about the contract and what it means and take a running back that early, and to burn a season of that is definitely
when you're taking him that high, there's no cost benefit anyway. He's already one of the top 5 or 6 highest paid running backs in the NFL, because I think his cap hit is like 8, but the average value of his contract, because of where you took him, you lost the cost benefits of that deal as soon as you drafted him that high.
I'm not talking as much about the cost benefits. It's the control of him and the age that he is. So yeah, he's going to be coming in and he's already one of the top paid running backs.
All of them though. That's the same argument I've used for Kyle Pitts since he was taken. If your team stinks, you lose the value of the contract no matter who you take.
But the issue is that a tight end a lot of times is going to be better in that second contract, and you don't see that with a running back. You are in your window right now, and one of those years is gone. So it's a tough one for him.
I think this team is still set up to win with the right passing attack / offensive coordinator / head coach. And Bijan Robinson can be a very big asset for the next 3 years, which is why he was drafted. So not yet for me, not a mistake. Not the direction I would have gone. I've said that from the beginning. Lawrence coming in with some big stars on Facebook. Thank you, my friend. He says, good morning, everyone. Just finished my coffee. Now time to plumb this house. Listen to my favorite show. So good morning, Broncos family. We are on the Falcons podcast right now, but you'll catch us here in just a minute when we switch over to Mile High Huddle in the next couple of minutes. So we might go just a little long. We'll be a little late. Tell everybody to come see us over here, and then we'll join over a Mile High Huddle. Lawrence, thank you for the stars, my friend. Helps keep the lights on my forehead nice and shiny. Gary Palmer says, good morning, Scott and Nick. Good morning to you, Gary. Good to see you. And I skipped Shaggy. How did I do that? Real Shaggy. Love that picture up there. He says, is it bad that I want us to tank the next 3 games so we can get a good pick for sure and a new coach? No. There's going to be some people that tell you how to fan. You can't tell me that Falcons fans weren't watching that game yesterday. So, and just freaking lose and get rid of this guy. They were saying it. Falcons are now up into the top 10. They're 10th right now in the draft. They're getting into that quarterback range where Jaden Daniels can be on the table, where I can trade a top 7 pick and then a 2025 and maybe get into that Drake May, Caleb Williams conversation. No. The NFL rewards you for losing. Why would you think it is necessarily always a bad thing to lose? Sometimes it's better for you in the long term to lose, Nick.
Yeah, it's as long as you hit, right? There's always that line of demarcation somewhere in the draft. But if you are a rudderless team right now, losing, let's say you finish with the 7th pick instead of the 15th pick, well, that's the value of a early 2nd round pick in terms of a trade capital and that difference there in that one. So maybe it gives you a chance to get a better player, or you're in a much better position to move up for a player that you're targeting. So Don't know if they will lose 3 games in a row. It's pretty hard to do that in the NFL, and none of those teams are world beaters by any means, but 1 and 2, 3 losses is certainly possible. We'll see. I mean, there's still a reality out there where the Falcons win 3 in a row and make the playoffs. Very improbable, right? We're writing fan
We've been
fiction at
saying
this
that every
point.
week.
Yeah, we're writing fan fiction at this point with what we saw on yesterday in Carolina. But yeah, we'll see.
We've just seen too much of that team that was in Carolina for this year. And if this was a harder schedule, this team would be, how many games have they played? I lose track with the 17 games. They're 17 and 14, so they're 6-8. This team would probably be 3-11 with a real schedule. Again, they're 0-8 against teams that have the record of the teams that have beaten them is 375. That's a 6-11 record. 0-8 against those teams. If this team had a realistic schedule, they've beaten one team with a winning record, the Houston Texans.
And also after this loss too, and everything that's happened this season, the vibes in there have to be dead man walking with the offensive staff and even the quarterback there. And when you're playing without a lot of belief, you're going to see mistakes and ugly football and just a lack of a lot of that fire. And when you're a run team, you kind of need that fire to get a lot of things going. So
Rusty says, talking about tanking, and Michael Lewitzki comes in on Facebook. He says, we don't have to tank. They just stink. And that's kind of the point too. Rusty says the Colts, Bears, and Saints all look like losses. I agree. The Colts are playing really good football right now under a young, new head coach, Shane Steichen. The Saints on the road, I don't remember the last time, that looks like an L. And the Bears on the road. The Bears are playing much better than the Falcons right now. So I agree. Oblivion Empire coming in says, do you think we're going to go 6-11? And do you think our second and third picks from the Jags would get Fields? Second and third it might. But I don't think you have both this year from the Jaguars. The third becomes a second if they re-sign Calvin Ridley. So appreciate the super chat. So the third would become a second. So the second rounder, maybe, and then something else would get you on the phone with the Bears, and you might have to do something else. Do I think the Falcons are going to go 6-11? I feel like they squeak out a win of one of those three somehow, some way, somewhere, and finish 7-10 again, which would be a fireable offense. We've gone long. I got to hit you on these two guys, though, before we get out of here. Nick, apologize to Broncos country when we switch over to Mile High Huddle. We'll go a little long there. Eric Bieniemy had some success as an offensive coordinator on a bad team. Now, I've always said I'm not going to judge a coach at Washington because Washington's a dysfunctional franchise. He's had some success on the offensive side of the ball with the Washington Commanders. He's gotten some interviews, so people aren't necessarily afraid of his background. Otherwise, why bring him in for an interview at all? Is he a candidate for a head coach based on his resume?
Based on his resume, I say yes. There are some issues with some of his past in Colorado. That's one reason that it was never going to happen for Denver when they've been looking for head coaches almost every single year. But yeah, he's somebody to consider. You also wonder about what staff he's bringing in. And that's something that we don't give enough credit to when we talk about this is, I mean, look across the way in Carolina. They hired an all-star staff, but there's absolutely no familiarity and cohesion between their coaches. And once things get a little bit rough, there's finger pointing. They're not communicating very well. So you have to bring in people who you're comfortable with, that you can communicate with, that there's synergy there. So that's always a part of it.
And that's the thing I like about Arthur Smith's as the head coach. I like his staff other than him as the offensive coordinator. Ryan Nielsen's been a home run hire. Jerry Gray, defensive backfield coach. Offensive line, phenomenal. The staff's been good. It's just the offensive coordinator's got to go. So Eric Bieniemy, and you mentioned a redemption candidate. 3 years ago, when the Atlanta Falcons were doing hiring, one of the guys they brought in, I was like, this is ridiculous. He's way not too ready for this. All of a sudden, he's having some success. How about Joe Brady up at the Buffalo Bills?
I don't know if I'd bring him in as a head coach, but it's possible that he gets a chance to hop ship. I don't know if
he's already got the offensive coordinator job locked up if that's what he wants to be. So the only way you're getting him from Buffalo is as a head coach.
I don't know if I would do that at this point, considering the small sample size out there and the fact that he's coordinating with such a weapon as Josh Allen. So maybe, again, you have to be a year early or not. Maybe bring him in for an interview, but That offense, I think, was even humming when they still had Ken Dorsey there. It was more, from what I understand, interpersonal stuff there rather than the scheming stuff out there with Buffalo. So certainly a possibility, but I don't know if I'm ready to say him for a head coach. We got Joe coming in saying, "Great morning."
You've got real quick, and good morning, Joe. He says, "Great morning, Scott and Nick. Just here to say Smith needs to be fired." I think, I've always said I don't necessarily want to take the offensive coordinator from the guy that has the Hall of Fame quarterback. One, Josh Allen is a lot more volatile than that. Two, you've got the in-season turnaround that just plays so much in Joe Brady's favor on that. Like, wow, this team took off right here when they made this move. That I think he's got a chance. He's going to get some head coaching. Joe Brady's going to get some head coaching interviews again. Whether he's a year away, maybe, but he's going to get them.
Yeah, that's sure. Well, so we'll see. I don't know if Brian Johnson with Philly. I feel like they've been pretty volatile this season and a step down from Steichen. Maybe you have Callahan out there in Cincinnati, somebody to keep an eye on as well, especially when you talk about what they've done with backup quarterbacks.
That was another one. Doesn't Zach Taylor call plays there, or did he give that up?
I think he gave it up, but
Okay.
Callahan's had interviews multiple times, and it works really closely with the quarterbacks and the change that we've seen with the offensive system in Cincinnati, going from the shotgun heavy, quick pass, Joe Burrow to more under center, more West Coast tenants. Browning has been really impressive. So Callahan is somebody that I would also be interested in interviewing for a potential head coaching position if I was looking for an offensive staff.
And Robert says EB is loved in Washington. He loves coaching there. If Rich Rodrigo leaves, he stays there. Howell and their players love him. Well, then he would be a candidate as a head coach there. So that was the question for me. Is he a head coaching candidate? Could he make that leap this year? It doesn't have to be the Falcons. I'm talking just overall. These guys there's going to be a lot of openings. There are a lot of openings already. So who's going to be the top head coaching candidates? We've got to get out of here. We went long today on a Monday. Appreciate y'all. We'll apologize. We're going to head over to Mile High Huddle. We'll talk some more of this stuff too. If you want to follow us, youtube.com/Mile High Huddle. Want to say thank you to our super chat and Facebook superstars today. Edward Brown, Oblivion Empire, Jeremy Cox, Michael Ranquillo, The Real Shaggy, Lawrence Rivera, Gary Palmer, Rusty Moore, Oblivion Empire again. So thank y'all for coming in and helping to support the show. There's a lot of new faces in here today, so make sure you hit that like button and that subscribe so you get the alerts when we come back on. We're here Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We talk all kinds of football, and basically it's about time to get into draft. So thanks everybody for being here. Nick, do you have any final thoughts? You look like you were itching to say something before we left.
3 more games. It's going to suck when it's over, and we'll have a lot of time to talk draft. So excited for that. Sorry, I had 3 text messages and a call from my mother, so I don't know what's going on. So.
All right. We'll make sure things are okay. Follow us on over to youtube.com/Mile High Huddle. Otherwise, we will see you on Wednesday back on these channels. Thanks for being here, everybody. Have a great Monday afternoon.